Hello everyone. So the next topic is about the how do plants absorb the water. So how do plants absorb water? So plants absorb water through the roots. So roots are present in the soil. So soil in the soil there will be water, then the roots will absorb the water and it will be transported to all the parts of the plant. So this is our main focus of the topic, is how they do this process. So let's start with the first slide of introduction. Plants absorb water through their roots, stem and leaves. So this is what I have told, that mostly they absorb the water from the roots. However, most water is being absorbed by the roots. So when we see a germination of a seed, there is an embryonic root which is called the radicle that grows and develops into the first root. So when a seed is being germinated and all the conditions of environmental conditions are being fulfilled, then there is an embryonic root or the radicle which grows and they develops into the first root. So there are three zones of development. First is meristematic zone, then elongation zone, and then the maturation zone. So these are all the zones which help in the development and the growth of the plant. So maturation zone is somewhat called the zone of differentiation or root hair zone. So in this this is the last stage in which the plant has been grown, the small plant, the seed has been grown to a plant. So this is the maturation stage or maturation zone. So how is the process of absorption of water by the roots takes place? So root has root hairs which are extensions of the epidermis that serves to increase the surface area, and they aid in the absorption of water and the soil nutrients. So absorption of water by roots is a passive pressure driven process. So it is a pressure driven and passive process. So the actual movement of water through a cell membrane is the result of two processes, that is diffusion and the bulk flow. So these are the two movements of water which takes place. Size of water molecules permit it to pass through the bilayer of the plasma membrane. So it will pass through the plasma membrane, and this would be largely a diffusion of movement subject to Fick's law. So there is a law which is called Fick's law, where the larger diffusion, where the diffusion of movement is being the subject. Then we just introduced the term aquaporins here. So these are the aquaporins here. So this is the aquaporin which is being depicted here. This is the membrane which is being depicted here. The carbon dioxide molecules, the steroid hormones, and the oxygen has been shown, and the arrow as this, and there is a water which is being releasing out. So what is aquaporin? The membrane also possesses transport proteins. The one involved with water is called the aquaporin. So this the transport of proteins, the one that is involved with water transport, is called the aquaporin. So aquaporin protein serves as a water filled channel. So it is a water filled channel, so which is accomplished by the submicroscopic bulk flow. So as we have discussed in the previous slide, there are two actual movements, that is diffusion and bulk flow. So aquaporins, they are accomplished by submicroscopic bulk flow. So aquaporins, they also allow the transport of small neutral solutes across the cellular membrane. So they will allow the transport of the cellular membrane. So what can be the factors that are affecting the aquaporins? Phosphorylation, pH, calcium, pressure and temperature. These are all the factors that are responsible for the aquaporins. Soil water. Now what is soil water and how the water is being absorbed by the roots is through the soil. So we will discussing is this is the soil is a very complex medium, because it is a mixture of many things like inorganic materials, their water, then their dissolved solutes and air. So it is a mixture of all the inorganic things. Field capacity. The capacity holding the water holding capacity of the soil is called the field capacity. So it represents the maximum amount of water that soil can hold after allowing free drainage. So it will allow the free drainage if there is a maximum amount of water being in the soil. So for example, if there is a clay soil or soil with a high humus content, they have the high field capacity or the large field capacity. So this is the field capacity when the water holding capacity of the soil is being depicted. Then in this we will be discussing two pathways, that is the apoplast pathway and the symplast pathway. So when the water is absorbed along the with mineral solutes by the root hairs purely by the diffusion, so once the water is absorbed by the root hairs, it will move deeper into the root layers by the two distinct pathway. So we will be discussing these two pathways in detail. So this is the apoplast and this is the symplast. Then apoplastic movement. What is apoplastic movement? This pathway basically involves the two movements, that is the diffusion and the bulk flow. We have already both these movements, that is the diffusion and bulk flow of the water through intercellular spaces, cells and the wall of the cell. So there will be flow of water through the intercellular spaces, cells and the walls of the cells. It is always extended from the root hairs of other epidermal cells to the endodermis, where the waterproof band of the suberin on the radical walls, they forces to enter the endodermal cells across the plasma membrane. So what is the role of suberin here? Suberin acts as a barrier to water and the solute movement. So it will act as a barrier. So if we take the other like membranes, there is the endodermis membrane, which is the innermost layer of the cells in the root cortex which surrounds the stele. So where comes the role of apoplastic pathway here? So it is responsible for the transport of water from the epidermis to a trachy element of the root. So this is the apoplastic movement. Then comes the symplastic movement or symplastic pathway. This is a system of interconnected protoplast. So it will be a system of interconnected protoplast. The cytoplasm of neighboring cells are connected through plasmodesmata. So there will be a cytoplasm of the neighboring cells and that is being connected through the plasmodesmata. So here the water travels through the cells and occurs through the root hairs cells, through the endodermis and across it all the way to the dead xylem cells. Water encounters the outermost cells through the cell membrane and then moves from cell to cell through the plasmodesmata. So it will move from cell to cell through the plasmodesmata. There is a symplastic movement which is relatively slower and may be aided by the cytoplasmic streaming. So it will be aided by the cytoplasmic streaming. So these are all the references and these was all about how the plants absorb water through the two pathways.